Budget meeting of council to order, Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Majinski.
That the Monday, March 22nd, 2021 budget meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder. Councilor Riemann. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. New business 3.1, animal facility upgrades. A report dated March 22nd, 2021 from the Director of Operations and Infrastructure to provide information regarding the proposed animal facility upgrades. Recommendation, please. Councilor Korkalka.
Council receives report for discussion.
Seconder. Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Korkalka.
Yeah, I guess just one thing, I was in and talked to CAO and asked if we could have the recent inspection report supplied by the BC SPCA. She had reached out or was going to be reaching out to obtain that. I'm learning today is it was a verbal report from the BC SPCA. I'd like to hear from staff because in my opinion, when somebody comes in to do an inspection, it should be by paper. And if they're asking certain things, then put it on paper and not just a verbal. And I have that. I wasn't at the dog pound tour. I've been there in the past and thinking I need to go. So I'd like to hear why we would not ask for a written inspection report so we know what we need.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Member Transfer Council. I'll actually have Chief Curry respond to the verbal report. Chief Curry.
Good evening, Worship, Council. Where to start with this? So the BC SPCA inspection was tagged onto a subsequent visit that the SPCA was actually conducting business in Tumbler Ridge for a different reason. So at the same time, we just thought it prudent to have them come take a look at our facility, see if they had any concerns to voice. Out of previous experiences, I had concerns with some things that are documented in the report, the mouse feces, the inability to keep it heated sufficiently when we were in the really cold snap that we had this winter. And such to that, they provided a few just verbal recommendations based on what they saw in a cursory review. Nothing said that, in their opinion, nothing had to be done at the moment that warranted it. So things like drainage, et cetera, we could pick up as we made maintenance improvements to it. Nothing stops us from using the facility in its current state. If council wishes, we can certainly have them back and have a more comprehensive report in order to go through those things, but we understand that there are issues with the building. We've identified that without them having to tell us, and it's our responsibility under legislation to ensure that the building is safe for animals to be housed for an indefinite amount of time.
Thank you. Follow up.
So the reason I asked that question, I asked it to our CEO, was for that. Are we just going to be putting a Band-Aid on a building? And how long does this Band-Aid last? And that's why I was looking for that report, because I mean, it does name a lot of things that it could possibly name. I know staff has put this and stuff. That's my concern. So we go and we spend $50,000 on the stuff that's suggested by staff, and 2 years from now or 3 years from now, that's not sufficient. We need to build a new building. And that's another $100,000, or whatever it may be with the price tag. That's my concern. We going to put $50,000 towards as council, and in the future we're going to be building something new or a real good retro is my concern. To me, it's a $50,000 we can throw away.
Ms. Thompson.
I'll have Director Beal respond to the proposed upgrades.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson, Your Worship Council. So the proposed upgrades would certainly improve the building in regards to the heating, the water, frozen water pipes, the drainage, the accessibility or acceptability to housing animals in there. I think with the improvements, proposed improvements, I think you could see at least 10 plus years. That's all dependent on the amount of animals that are housed. Currently, talking with Chief Curry, it's adequate space right now, but if that was to increase, obviously the building would be small.
Okay, thank you. That answer your question, Councillor? Okay. Any other comments? Counselor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I did a tour with Chief Curry and Mr. Beal, and it definitely does need some work. I'm just wondering about, after Councilor Kukalka, maybe, I don't know, maybe looking at starting from scratch instead of trying to fix it. It might be a discussion worth having, just so that we're not, a lot of times I think it might be easier just to start from scratch instead of trying to fix something that's broken. So it's definitely a conversation I think worth having.
Yeah, and I definitely have some concerns as far as proposed budget due to the fact of opening up the walls and finding something else. I guess in that situation, if we do find something out of the ordinary structurally with the building, we should probably come back and reevaluate this refurbishment, I would say. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So when we look at one of our bylaw strategies recently, it's I believe animal control is one of the big things that we've been wanting from our bylaw. What do we want to be working on? We want to control loose dogs. We want to control dogs off leash. So this may mean we are increasing our desire for space and in this particular issue. So I mean, Mr. Beal said it. We have about 10. We could potentially get 10 years out of this, and the $50,000 mentioned in the report. That's just in case they come across something inside the walls that they don't know about, right? So I think we go back to that. It's better to budget for it versus not having and go over, right? So I think we should be continuing with this project because animals are a big part of our bylaw right now, and we need to make sure that they have adequate space and conditions.
Yeah. Any other comments? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. At this point, I won't be voting in favor of the amount required for the upgrades of the facility. Chief Curry had stated that we could still function with it as is. I think we should get away with some minor upgrades for now. I don't think we house a lot of animals there in a month, or usually they're picked up within the day or maybe an overnight or two. We do have to make room for a couple of cat kennels, but I can't see this being $50,000 at this point. I think if we put a lower amount, and I was thinking $5,000 to $10,000, just to get some upgrades in, and some fencing where needed, and then we can look at this down the road. But I won't be voting in favor at the money requested right now.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Howe?
I think we look at it for next year. Myself, I don't think it's a this year thing. It doesn't seem critical to me, and until we have proper, better information, maybe an actual report from the SPCA. To me, I just think if we can get through for another year, get through for another year. We're already getting tight on this budget as it is, so we're already having to borrow from reserves to do this one as it is, so.
Okay. Anyone would like to put forward a motion? Councillor Kukalka?
So I'm not prepared to put a motion for you, Your Worship. Was this not already removed from the previous budget?
It's still on the capital and special projects, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Council did not remove it completely from the budget. It was based on bringing more information forward.
Councillor Kukalka?
I'll put a motion for it to remove from the budget for 2021.
Seconder? Councillor Howe? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. .2 Fire Rescue Fleet Squad 4 car replacement. Report dated March 22nd, 2021 from the Director of Protective Services regarding the proposed replacement of Squad and command car for the 2021 budget season. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, I'd like to move the alternate recommendation that council defer the replacement of squad 4 until the completion of the fire services necessary.
Seconder. Councillor Kukalka, discussion? Councillor Kukalka?
So I guess just back to Council Kirby, in the report, they're asking to bump the command car up from the squad 4, it's in the page 7 part. I'm not trying to add to your motion, I'm just asking you if that's what you were thinking, or are you just holding it off?
Councillor Kirby? Councillor Kirby?
No, I didn't want to add anything to that motion.
Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, so if I may, and I apologize, I mean, I didn't reach out to Chief Curry, I read the report. If he can just give a reason why he thinks command should be moved up. I know they tried to come forward, and he's honest in his report, saying they tried to add an extra command last year. It was supposed to be an SUV because it was seen to, was gonna be better for their equipment to house it and all that stuff. But I just think maybe we can review from staff if we.
So you mean to move it up from the 10-year replacement time? Or what do you mean by moving it up?
Well, command, he wanted to move it up in replacement of squad 4, the second from his report, and I'd like to know why.
Okay. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Transfer Council. Chief Curry, can you respond, please?
Your Worship, Council, so this piece of apparatus is the frontline responding apparatus to, I'd say, about 95% of the emergency calls that we go to. Without this piece of apparatus, our service delivery is impacted by its loss. By keeping it and having it in tip-top shape and it being reliable at all times, we can maintain the service delivery that we're currently having reliably, I guess is what we're getting around to. We've had issues with command car last year. I'm not saying that we're not going to have them again this year. The thing is now we're starting to get older with it. It sees, again, we're talking about idle time. We see a lot of severe duty usage out of this vehicle, and in best practice, in line with best practice standards, the 7 to 10 year mark is the industry standard, and a lot of municipalities are moving towards a 5-year lease option in order to maintain this service delivery. So this is why I've once again put forward a proposal to have command car replaced.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor? Councillor Madrinsky?
Thank you, Member Bertrand. I'm opposed to the recommendation on floor now, because I think it's imperative that we have this command car replacement. I was in favor of it last time, just because of the lead time it would take to get retrofitted with equipment needed to be put in. This could still potentially be a year out with the delay of what's going on with COVID and everything else, and the workforce out there. And I'd like to see this being put into action sooner than later, whether it's just getting it ordered and ready to go so that it can be utilized next year. And I feel the same way with Squad 4. What we have right now, it's not even usable for its intention, so I think that should be looked at as well.
Any other comments? Yeah, I think wildfire response is going to be utmost importance in the next few years, I think. It's definitely one of the greatest risks to our community is wildfire, and we've seen it through the wildfire reduction measures that have been put in place. And as Councillor Jinsky mentioned, Squad 4 is definitely not in a very usable state at the moment. So I am not in favor of this motion at this time. I do think both of these units are imperative to the quick response time for our fire department. Other comments? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Do we know when we'll have the fire services master plan completed?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Transfer Council. I'll have Chief Curry respond to the fire service master plan timeline. Chief Curry?
Worship of Council, so we're currently in the process of developing the tender documents for the Fire Services Master Plan. They are going to be issued, I'd say, middle of next month. Hopefully we get some responses back. Completion, I don't have a deadline on it yet. I would likely say summer.
Thank you. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right. 3.3. Mr. Norbury?
Thank you, Member Trent. I'm going to excuse myself as I have a continuing interest in the library.
Thank you.
In your office.
Thank you. Three point three, 2021 library budget, report dated March 22nd, 2021, from the Chief Administrative Officer with information regarding the proposed 2021 library budget. I'd like to bring this forward for discussion. Seconder, Councilor Kirkowka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Let's start. Councilor Kirkowka.
I'll start. I actually thought we may have seen the minutes from the previous budget meeting here, just so I could talk a bit about that. But I'm gonna do it because I received emails, and we all receive them from when we go to meetings. We send out the agendas and all that. And I'd like to, if I may, Your Worship, ask Councillor Majinski if he can explain to me in the agenda he forwarded on for the last library meeting. It was under budget 2021, letter C. Inappropriately asked question, Council. Can you explain to me what that was?
Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Member Trent. Yeah, so it was brought to the attention from the last delegation that a staff member was allegedly selling Avon from the library. So that was brought up with the board, and then it was discussed in the closed, and so those minutes are going to be enclosed until we come up with ramifications on how to correct this. I did bring up an idea of having policy to follow the districts. So,
Okay.
Does that answer Councilor Kirkowka's concerns?
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Kirkowka.
Yeah, so I have a follow-up to that. I was already in and talked to our CAO, so I just wanted to get clarification on that. I apologize, Councilor, for just getting a chance to reach out to you and talk to you. I'd just like to hear from our CAO and how, to me, in previous budgets when the libraries come in, we've been told that they want stuff enclosed, like where it's the talk about wages and labor and who gets paid what, not their names, but their positions. We were told that's not closed because it's actually not your staff, is my understanding. So I'd like to know how that question is inappropriate. When again, it's being asked to the president of the board.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. So the inappropriate question that, like, asked at a council meeting?
Councilor.
Sorry,
Yeah, no problem. So it would have been the Avon question I'd asked the president of the library board that was on the phone to the delegation. I'm assuming that's what I just heard from Councilor Majinski.
yeah,
To me, I don't know if, like, again, if the apologies go out, so be it, but to me, I didn't think it was inappropriate, as again, those are not your employees. We're asking a board that we send, I think last year it was over $360,000 of taxpayer dollars, not including the in-kind that we have yet to talk about. So is that not a question that we as council should be bringing forward when the residents of Tumbler are bringing them forward?
Ms. Thompson?
thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. So in regard to a question like that, the operation of the library is the responsibility of the library board. In having a question that you had regarding that, inappropriate, I'm not certain that it was inappropriate, as you did have a question regarding the operation of the library. I don't know outside of that. I'm a bit at a loss from my side of it on the district's responsibility for asking those questions outside of a public meeting.
Any other comments on the library budget? Questions? Councilor Lehman?
Thank you. There's still thank you. What I'm still wondering about is, with the amount of time that the library was closed, the amount of money that they spent on labor was more than the year before. And even with the salary increases, that to me, in 3 months, there should be, you should think it would be significantly less.
If they stopped operations, but from what I understood, they continued operations, just had the doors closed. There was virtual programs, there was still programming that needed to be done. If they had ceased operations, I would definitely say there would be a significant decrease in pages, but I understand they didn't cease operations. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and the best math I can come up with here is it looks like the library was open 35% of the year compared to what it was the previous year. And I think what Councillor Lehman is alluding to is they still managed to spend 90% of the budget. It's a decreased service level. Like, we didn't have, we talked about this back in March of last year when COVID was coming out. And I specifically said that I hope that these groups realize that we as a district are doing everything we can to save a buck during these times. They should also be doing the same thing to save $1. That's open for those boards. We sent a letter to them. They sent us letters back that were very unprofessionally written. They had the heads up that we're looking for them to save money during this time, and they did not do it. So to me, I have a big concern that the board is not looking at the amount of money spent at the library during COVID times especially as the same way that this council was. The direction was given, do what you can to save money. It doesn't look like it was done that way. It looks like to me it was spend as much money as we can so that we get the same budget for next year. And it's a decreased service level, sorry to say it, but it is. It just, you could not go into the library for months at a time. They're open 20 hours a week now, used to be 58 hours a week. 2019, the library was open 357 days in a year. Like, 357 days in a year, that's from the information that you can pull from their records. What were they open this year? They still managed to spend the same amount of money, but were open way less. To me, that's a problem with the direction from the board through their staff. They just, I don't know how it happens or how it goes, but to me, I'm not really happy with what I've seen with the spending of the board.
Okay. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, so I know they were emailed out, or I believe they were, had issues with the email, but I did see it, just couldn't get right into the file. I was hoping they were gonna see it on our desk, and just thought about it. I know that Ms. Thompson has sent out some information from the library. I just wanted to share forward those to my phone. Sorry, I wouldn't pull up, but I'm hooked to the Wi-Fi, so my phone.
Yeah.
Just because I was unable to read, I believe it was Councillor Howe asked if we could just have staff break it down a bit so it's readable. So I'm hoping I get a chance to read it before we get too heated in here.
Yeah, so that came from a meeting I had with the head librarian. I had requested some more statistics as far as the library goes, and she was able to pull it from a website. I'm not sure which website, but quite a bit of regional statistics and quite valid, for sure. Councillor Howe?
So if I'm not mistaken, our CAO received that information on a Monday through you, last week, around Monday. The budget this was prepared on Wednesday and sent out to us on Wednesday, today's budget meeting. So I don't feel that our CAO has had enough time to review the information that's in there, to find out where everything is and how it all laid out, and to have an idea of hours of service and service levels. There's a few categories she was able to pick out. There's a few things we were able to highlight together in a meeting that I had with her today. But that was my impression when talking to the CAO today, is that it's a lot of information for her to try to process, and she hasn't really been able to give us her opinion on the information that is there, because she hasn't had enough time to process it. It's a lot of information to try to take in and process. So to me, I don't even know if we have enough information right now to make a decision on the library, to tell you the truth. Not an informed decision anyhow.
Okay. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Our decision is to figure out what level we're going to sponsor or fund the library at. It's not how to run the library and how the board runs it. That's not what we're here to do. We have to come up with the amount. To me, the library is still the key feature to the residents of Tumbler Ridge. and we can't forget that. Now, true, they were open quite a substantial time less than they were, but they were still putting out a product, and people were still, using the library. Now we just gotta figure out at what funding level we're gonna fund it.
Mhm.
And
I agree.
I think we've got a lot of pluses with that facility. It covers more of the residents in Tumbler Ridge than a lot of the other organizations do. So, there is a big chunk of wages over this last year. When you look at it, it's over 300,000 of that just is wages alone. So when you say that we don't have things to address the residents of Tumbler Ridge about through budget season, this is definitely one of them, and how it ranks as a priority. So at this point, I'd like to, we gotta just figure it out. What is the funding level gonna be? We do have a lot of information. A lot of that information came today, and I couldn't wrap my head around all of it. But.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was a jam-packed statistic file, and I mean, most of the statistics were, per capita spending according to the other libraries in the region. And then, book circulation and things like that. Yeah, it was just additional information as far as statistics go. But I agree with you, Councillor Kirby. I definitely realize the value of our library and what it does and the service it provides. It's been an excellent service for not only my young family, but I know many others in the community. I can't say I'm in full support of the increase at the moment. I would definitely be in support of keeping it the same as last year. Councillor Kirkowka.
Thank you, Richard. So I guess one thing I see, and it's regards to the library budget, and then also Ms. Thompson's budget, she has cut her budget. So she's actually, obviously through her staff, her senior staff, hats off to them, but produced a budget that's lower than it was last year. And then we have a library that comes in and has actually increased by 6%. So that is my concern. It seems to me that it's just an open book. We're just going to give raises to everybody, and that is my concern. I get the minimum wage is going up, but I believe in the delegation, and I don't want to throw the number out there, but I thought I heard 3 for minimum wage employees, but they need that extra wage money so they can increase everything over their staff. So that's not always how it works. But if I can ask the worship if he knows what our in-kind services are to the library.
I do not know, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So when we're talking about in-kind, that is our hydro and our heat and everything, but it's all in one bill for community services building. So staff has not had the ability to even do on a square footage basis to see what those costs are. And I can't hazard a guess at this time, but those in-kind are for the maintenance and heating of the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Motion? Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to make a motion, but somebody else would have that. My concern is, there is some stuff that was emailed today, and I know myself, I haven't looked at it, I know, thank you, Ms. Thompson, for resending it, it actually came to my phone. Again, if staff hasn't had time to digest it, how do we just throw out numbers without having that information to digest? We asked for that at the last delegation in regards to their draft year end. I believe that's what a lot of that is.
No. None of that statistics has anything to do with their year end. The draft year end is right here on page 13. Councillor Kirkowka.
Okay, so community kitchens. It just gives you an open total, an ending total. This isn't, like, I wouldn't think this is not a draft, this is operations, but it doesn't list it all. If that's what your draft financial looks like, your worship. I'm sorry, but again, I have an issue with that. I mean, like, it's not about the amount, it's not what they do for the community as a whole and for our business. I think it's a great organization. they turn out great stuff, whether it's programs and some of the stuff they've added, some of the stuff they've taken away because it wasn't working. And they realized when they tried it, that they're taking some of that stuff out or not doing it as much. So it's not that they're not massive, I think we have to have the true information to gather the increase that they've asked for or pick an amount. And I don't, to me, we can just throw out amounts and vote on that and throw out a different amount, but to me, if we all get the chance to read the information, it's not even all here. And this is the Council Kirby just stated too, she didn't even get a chance to look through it, but I mean, I didn't even see it, so I haven't even really opened it. I just, thanks for it. We did put it in my phone, I get a chance to look at it later.
Yeah, so Ms. Thompson, those statistics that council's discussed or talking about, those are, public information on, I'm not positive the website, but can you explain what was sent, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, to council. So the information that was sent was a data set that is downloaded from the information that the library is required to report to the province every year. So there were two spreadsheets sent. One was library data for 2019, and I pulled out all the per capita items that were in this large data set to bring it down a little bit smaller. And so that is for every library in BC, what they are funding, program attendance, visits, revenues and expenditures per capita. The second one that I sent was Tumbler Ridge data from 2002 to 2019. And there was a lot of information in there, so I pulled it out into different spreadsheets that are in there. One is for programming, one was financials, one was staff, and one is the number of visits. So it is a lot of data, but it is from 2002 to 2019 for the library, for Tumbler Ridge Library itself.
As far as the 2020 financials, we do have an incomplete copy on page 13, but we were told that we are still at the auditors, is that correct?
Sorry, incomplete, like your page didn't print the full.
No, it's there.
Oh, okay, sorry, so this is, so on page 13, what you have is the draft 2020 financial for statement of operations and accumulated surplus, so that's basically your income statement. So those are preliminary numbers that the library has submitted to the auditor.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Kirkhope.
So, I mean, here's one, and I mean, I apologize, our delegation isn't here, we didn't get this form when we asked for it previous to the delegation, but we have COVID that started in March. 3 months into the year of 2020, but yet travel is $6,104. Over 50% of the budget. Or I guess it's not even a budget, but 50% compared to, over 50% compared to 2019. We've had COVID. Right? Eight months of the year was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I guess 9 months. So it's like there is some concern there. I'm good.
Councillor Howe.
Yeah, it's the statistics that I've seen there tells you what you get for your money. Like that to me is what our CAO needs the time to evaluate, to come in and say, are we getting a fair deal for our taxpayers with the amount of tax money that we're putting out? That's what I'm here for. I'm concerned about the amount of money for the taxpayer, right? Are we getting a good bang for their buck when we spend this money? And I don't think that I have that information at this time from our CAO, because she hasn't had time to process the information and provide it to us in a report and give us some indication of what's there. She's talking about stuff in there about number of library visits, and you can have some comparisons to 2019, the amount of hours in 2019, the amount of days that it's open, 357 days a year. And what were we open this year? Dramatically less than that, but spent the entire budget. So until we've had time to process that, that's the information that I want to see as compared to what this draft income statement is. Now, this is not a complete set of financials, this is an income statement, right? So what can she look at this and compare it and say, you know what, this is a fair dollar, you're getting a fair deal for the amount of money that was spent over there this year, or they've saved a ton of money, they did a great job on it. And to me, I can't process the information because I don't have it all. Seeing that she only got it on Monday, and we see it in an email sent out today, and I didn't have time to review it. So
Okay, Ms. Thompson, are you going to be able to come up with that kind of an opinion from that data? I'm not sure if we're looking for an opinion that you're not going to be able to give.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So what I'd be able to do is tell council how many library visits were reported in 2019 over 2018. The 2020 data has not been entered yet, and I'm not sure when that would be available through the library system as it's reported. But I would be able to tell you total visits per capita. You know, I can tell you that our programming is very well attended. Our circulation is about halfway through when you consider it to other libraries. So I can extrapolate the data and tell you where you sit compared to other libraries in BC as of 2019, but as of 2020 data, I don't have that. There is a lot of data there, so it would take a little while to pull that data out and provide comparisons. If there would be any questions on the data that was in there, I wouldn't have answers to those, but I would probably be able to reach out to the library, but it wouldn't be a report that I'd be able to bring back to council quickly.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. When we're talking about the library and what they've provided during COVID, it's important to know that people couldn't do anything. They couldn't go anywhere. So what they were doing was getting books delivered to them. So I think that's where the travel comes into it, is because I could speculate on that, but that's my guess. I can even confirm that for you guys if you like, as a liaison. But when they're processing and moving books in and out, cleaning, that's where the wages come in. And even though they are closed, the doors are physically closed, they're still operating as by delivery service and sitting with all of their programming. So instead of doing a program for the masses where you come in and grab stuff out of, like say, a box of crayons, everybody can take their colors and go and color. Now they have to individually package it so that they're set aside, sanitized, and delivered individually packaged. So that's probably where the costs come involved, where you're taking more staff time and more materials to provide the same service level. So we could even ask Ms. Coots to come back in and do a delegation and explain that better than me. And when we've talked to, as a board, with Paula about it, that's where she says a lot of staff time gets eaten away, is by trying to provide the same service with the doors closed. And I think they've done a pretty darn good job, because not too many communities have their libraries open, and there's a lot of people sitting at home that couldn't do anything but just watch TV, play video games, where our library has that extra option to provide all types of service, even advice on doing a resume or whatever, just simple tasks on how to operate your phone, where other people couldn't have that information given to them anywhere else. So I think there's a lot to be gained from this as well, and it's definitely a learning experience, and I don't think they should get docked for working twice as hard and being criticized for it. And it's not just because I'm sitting on that board as a liaison and I'm trying to defend them, but I think what the purpose of what they're doing here is far greater than any other community. So, and if you guys have any other questions, I can also bring them back to the board and ask them as well. Unless you'd like to have a delegation, them to come in again and explain dollar per dollar where the money's going and why they have it there and where it's going. So, like wages and benefits, yeah, it's down for sure, but not 40% down, or sorry, 60% down of what you would say would be comparable of how many days they were open this year, right? So,
yeah.
But I think a lot of the time and effort was put into getting all of these programs put out, hand delivered and set up differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Commendable job to try to continue the service that they provided in the difficult times. So, I do understand, Councillor Howell, your argument about the doors being closed for months, but it's not a matter of them ceasing operations. They were still doing virtual, they were still doing crafts, they were still trying to provide that level of service that they always have. So I don't know if that is really appropriate or valid to expect a a 1/3 decrease in cost because they still continued the service. Councillor Majinski?
And those services actually ramped up quite significantly because people were stuck at home. So they actually utilized it more than going to the library. So they could do these crafts and watch it virtually on YouTube and do them at home. So it was a kind of a win-win for the parents at home and not having to have the kids go straight crazy. So I think it was a very good and well planned out idea for the youngsters here.
Yep. That's really what council needs to decide is the level of service we would like the library to perform. And through that is how much the budget is going to be. Councillor Majinski.
Yeah, and I did bring this up to the board as well and say, okay, well, what if we do decide to reduce the library's budget by 5%? Where would we reduce that? And it would be from wages. So, and if we want to do something like that, are we willing to do that and lay somebody off? And we're trying to promote businesses here, have employment for people. We want new people to come into our community, yet we're reducing services and then not providing jobs for people. So it's counterintuitive in that sense. Like even if it is a part-time job for somebody, a teenager that's getting into the workforce, and we're taking that away from them. I don't think that's what we want to do either. And it's just whether we want to debate that because a lot of the services that we do provide there, or the programs, sorry, they're not a huge dollar. They're not huge amounts, like $4,000, $5,000. It's not huge wages. And in the grand scheme of, $370,000, $390,000, $5,000 isn't that big a deal. So to take one of those services away isn't a huge loss, right? So it probably upset more people having one less program for their children to enjoy at $5,000.
Councillor Howell?
I think there's more to it than just saying we need to figure out what the level of service is, right? So they tried to get to a level of service like they did in 2019, I understand, but they didn't get to that same level of service. The library is closed. It's only open 20 hours a week right now. It used to be open 58 hours a week. So even they're doing stuff virtually and you can say all this fantastic stuff that they're trying to do, which is great. I'm not knocking the library. I'm just saying for the value for our taxpayers, are we getting the value for giving them the same amount of money, but the library is only open 1/3 of the time that it used to be open? I'm not saying cut it by 2/3. What I'm saying is, yes, you keep saying we need to set the level of service. No, we don't. We need to set the budget. And are we getting our best bang for our buck? Or was our money better invested somewhere else during this time? We told them in March, do what you can to save money. We sent them a letter. Be prepared, save money, save money, save money. They did not. So that to me is my concern. I am concerned about the level of spending for the service that we got.
Okay. Councillor Majinski?
The main goal for the library was to provide the same level of service while being closed, and that's what they did. They delivered. And I think that's, just because you have a business serving pizza doesn't mean that everybody's going to sit down and eat pizza in the restaurant. It's going to be delivered to them. And that's where you're going to get the majority of the business, because people would rather enjoy it in their own comforts of their own home. And that's what has happened here. All the kids and all the families got to enjoy the crafts and the books at home in the comforts of their home. And it was delivered. So that comes at a cost of a delivery service. And that's where all the staff time took to provide that.
Any other comments? So is council wishing to defer this, or is somebody wanting to put a motion forward? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'd like to put a recommendation on the floor that the council approve the Tumbler Ridge Public Library funding in the amount of $377,188, a 2% increase.
Seconder? Councillor Majinski? Discussion? Councillor Kirby?
I just wanted to put the motion on the floor just to get the flavor of council. I am disappointed that we didn't get the financials and some of the reporting back on time. I think in the future, we need to have these organizations in a lot earlier when it comes to grant needs, fee for service, any kind of funding from the DTR. I think this also could be a topic of a let's talk in the next year, just to feel out the residents on how they feel about it. I do understand that with COVID, it played a big part in the use of the facility. I do think that people were getting a benefit from having the library functioning as it was. And I don't know if any kind of information that Ms. Thompson can get back to us from the report is really going to make a difference in our job as to setting the funding. I really don't. So I just want to see where council is sitting on this.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And a tie is defeat, correct? Defeated. Thank you. Any other motion? Councillor Kirby?
I'd like to put the motion on the floor that council approve the Tumbler Ridge Public Library funding in the amount of $369,792 at the 2020 funded level.
Seconder? Councillor Majinski? Discussion? Councillor Majinski?
Yeah, so if we decide to go to a lesser amount than what's on the table now, what are we willing to take away from the library is what we're gonna get at here. I honestly don't feel comfortable taking away from the library unless there's a valid reason that is brought up in my mind. But I'm definitely on the fence in all ears, so I'd like to hear what the rest of the council has to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe?
Not our job to tell them what they should remove and what they shouldn't. It's our job to give them amount. They see fit with what they can do. We don't get to tell them, bring less books in or do more crafts or do less crafts. We don't get to tell them that. We get to say, this is the amount of money that you're gonna get. We need you to provide the service level that you can for that. So if there's a decrease of funding, that's for them to figure out how they have to do it. And to me, that's why I wanted the information from Ms. Thompson, so that you guys can see the amount of time that the library was open in 2019 as compared to 2020. Maybe we don't have full numbers for 2020, how much it was open, but we have a pretty good idea based on the information Paula gave to us. One of the numbers that I pulled out of the chart that we received from our CAO was the library was open 357 days in 2019. So to me, does it need to be open does it need to be open on staff holidays? Right? Does it need to be open that amount of time? Right? Do they need to do all that amount to try to save $1 here? To me, there's some pretty easy ways that you could save some bucks here, but again, it's not for us to decide. You want to know what would happen or what we would say to that if we were looking for a decrease? That's not the motion that's on the floor, but if we were looking to, it's not our decision on how they do it. They'll have to figure that out. I can see some easy ways to do it.
Councillor Majinski?
Then at the end of the day, it'll be on us saying when we reduce our hours by 3 days a week. So then the residents of Tumbler Ridge are gonna blame that on council at that time because the reduction is, so we have to be cognizant of that idea of what we're gonna reduce it by and hopefully assume that it's not gonna be a huge reduction. If we're gonna reduce their budget by 20%, does that mean they're gonna be closed one more day a year or a week? And then the public is gonna be coming to us asking for answers. So we still have to have an answer for them when they come to us, right? So that's my only concern is, okay, yeah, we're gonna reduce the budget. Fine, I'm okay with that if that's what the rest of the council wants to do. But we have to have a very good answer as to why and have the same understanding as why the library did what they did.
Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Round 3. Counselor Kirkowka.
Put a motion forward that we defer this until we have the information back from our CAO. And we might not even be looking for a decrease in the library.
You don't have to defer it. There isn't a motion on the table at the moment, so if council doesn't want to put forward another motion, we can wait until next meeting and Ms. Thompson can divulge some more information through the stats. I don't think we're going to get a lot from it, to be honest, but Councillor Howe?
Based on the draft income statement, Ms. Thompson, can you give us any indication of how much money they were able to save in 2019? Sorry, 2020?
Thank you, Member Bertrand. I can give you a quick rundown of what I can see based on an income statement that has been provided. So funding level was down about $30,000 in income. If you look on page 13 at the end of the revenues there. So in 2019, revenue brought in was 428 and then it was 399. Once you go through their expenses, their amortization went up about $9,000. As we know, amortization is a number. We don't necessarily fund amortization, but it does show up in an income statement. At the end of the year, wages and benefits had dropped about $35,000. So their expenses were actually down from 430 down to 361. So there was $70,000 difference in expenses. So even with the amortization going up $9,000, there still is a reduction in expenses. So the annual surplus is about $38,000. Like, that doesn't necessarily cross right over to cash, depending on how things are working. But I would say that there was some savings that year, because the previous year there was a annual deficit of $2,000. So add the two of them together, you're sitting at about a $40,500 difference between income and expense year over year.
Thank you. Counselor?
So $38,000.
Ish.
Ish, right? Based on kind of an income statement that's kind of accurate. Okay.
Draft.
Any other comments? Councilor Majinski?
So that'd be 10%.
Roughly.
Primarily on wages.
Looks to be, yep. Okay. Any other comments, or shall we move on? Councillor Howe?
The recommendation on the floor, the council approve the Tumbler Library funding in the amount of $300,000.
Seconder? Seconder? Councillor Kirby, you want a second?
Okay.
Okay, discussion? Councillor Kirby?
I'll be voting opposed to that. That's a big drop without any kind of information to go with it. I can't support that.
Okay. Councillor Majinski?
So if we go with 300,000, are they gonna operate at 40% going forward in 2021? Is that the ramification of dropping it that much so that they can reduce the amount of days they are open to match what they should have been open in 2020?
That's an operational decision. I don't know. Any other comments? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Heated, thank you. I think we'll move on. I think we've tried 3 different ways, so. So, Ms. Thompson, if you could try and cipher those statistics for us, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Let's get Chris back. I'll grab him. Somebody grab him. I think he's in my office there. Thank you. 3.4, Chamber of Commerce fee for service. Report dated March 22nd, 2021. Information regarding the Tumbler Ridge Chamber of Commerce Board and fee for service request. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
That a 1-year fee for service be approved for the Tumbler Ridge Chamber of Commerce at $30,000 for grant writing services.
Seconder, Councilor Kirby. Discussion. Councilor Krokowka.
Yeah, I won't be supporting the recommendation on the floor. I think again, we need to look to word it differently, equivalent to the 2020. I was actually talking to Ms. Thompson, it'd be really hard to do equivalent to 2021 business license fees, but it needs to be worded that way, so I think businesses understand that, yeah, it's funding for the taxpayer, it's funding for the district, but it's actually coming out of how many businesses bought license within the district. So I won't support it for that reason. And if I can just make another comment, I know that the employee executive director reached out to me. They do have a board, I think there's 9 members on it. After the meeting there the other night, last week. There is 9 members. She feels a little down, I guess, with the COVID this year, as they were only able to do the AGM. And she tried to do another meeting, but could not get quorum. So they were only able to actually have one meeting, which was the AGM, and tried for another meeting, but couldn't get quorum. So that is a goal for 2021, is to try to have the 4 meetings, I guess, that they're supposed to have. So, just next time we should contact me.
Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I support the motion that I put out there. In one, I try and look at what is the value we get out of this service. I think it's absolutely worth $20,000, 22, excuse me. And if we can make those decisions year by year on how much we get our business licenses, it's pretty close. So at this point in time, I'm in favor of the $30,000.
Thank you. More comments? Ms. Thompson, I had a concern in regards to the agenda, the application. A lot of the executive director's answers were cut off. Just wondering what happened there.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. On what page was that?
Yes, so in the application on page 20 and 21. So like on page 20, number 2, it's cut off. Number 3 is cut off. Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I was wondering if it was a printing on our, like when we printed it, that it was there. I'm not sure that was the way that it was submitted, and I guess we didn't, as staff, did not notice that the sentences weren't full or that it wasn't expanded as the information was typed in.
Okay, thank you. I did make some comments last week in regards to the chamber, and my frustration came out definitely, and I wanted to explain a bit of my frustration here. It's very disappointing to me to read in the application that this Chamber of Commerce is not going to be able to operate without district money this year. So once again, we've got another organization being completely solely dependent on district funding to operate. And that's frustrating to me. I don't agree with that, especially when I see their financials and a little bit more details there. So that's where my frustration comes from. But I do realize the value of a grant writer. For our nonprofits, a grant writer is extremely important. The grant writer was very successful this year, in securing grants for the community. So I do see the value of it, and I would be in support of this motion this year. And Councillor Kirkcaldy, you did mention, joining it with business licenses, but I don't really agree with that, because not every business in the community is a chamberman. So, we are right around the amount of business license revenue we collect for the year. I think if we're just cognizant of that number each year and try to stick in that ballpark. I think the intention will be there, but to actually marry it to the business license amounts, I don't really agree with, because not every business is a chamber member. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, so I'll rebuttal you. So the reason that some businesses are not chamber members is because of the wording from the district. Grant in aid. Right? I was in and actually asked staff if we could just hand over the business amounts. Can't, it needs charter. But if we word it that way, they actually might get more businesses to be members, because it's equivalent to the business license fee, not a grant aid. That's why we'll not support this motion. I believe the chamber will see more members join when they realize it's just not a grant aid, they're not just getting money. It's actually coming from people that do buy business licenses. So they feel that the chamber may have more say back to this council or to the district when members bring it forward to them. It's pretty hard to argue the hand that feeds you, but really they're arguing for the hand that feeds them, which is the people that buy the business licenses.
Good point. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I mean, if we marry them that way and when we do what you're proposing, Councillor Cressa, then the Chamber of Commerce transmutes itself from an organization that's trying to help businesses grow, be sustainable, attractive businesses. So now they're chasing down businesses to, they could potentially be diverting their time away from my ideas, what the Chamber should be doing, into trying to police businesses to make sure that they're paying business fees. Or they're, and that takes away from what they're doing. I wouldn't want them to take away from what they're doing to be essentially the business license place.
Yeah, good point. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, so just so we're aware, you do not have to have a business to be a chamber member. It's for members. You don't have to have a business to be a chamber member.
Business license, you mean?
You don't have to have a business license to be a chamber member. Okay? There's lots of other organizations that are part of the chamber that are not businesses. It's for their membership. The reason I say about the business license fee, it's for the business that are buying license. What about the chamber going after and chasing them? This is something that's been talked about many times by local businesses that are the chamber has tried to get them to join, but they have an issue because of the way it's grant made. Hard to ask the chamber to come in and argue that the cost of our garbage pickup bins, or the rental of our bins that we paid, certain businesses have paid for 30 years, pretty much bought 50,000 of those bins, but the chamber has a hard time coming in here because they're arguing with the money that hand that feeds them. When it's coming from the people that actually buy the business licenses, I think they have a different voice. This is my 2 cents. Same amount of money, close to it. I don't think it makes a difference.
Okay. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Councillor Kalka, I think you're maybe the businesses out there getting confused on what council would treat the Chamber of Commerce if they came back with constructive feedback. I think that comes to a culture issue here, in that if we are saying to an organization, if you don't toe the line and tell us what we want to hear, we're going to cut your funding. That's not what I want to portray. I appreciate back and forth, and I would not punish the Chamber of Commerce because they're telling us something we may not agree with. That shouldn't come into play with their funding. I want to encourage that type of dialogue. So when we're saying that they will only tell us what we want to hear, they won't tell. That's, I think, a culture thing, and we need to correct that. I think it should be outside of this conversation.
Great. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. The chamber wouldn't be able to survive without a business license fees, and that's the sad thing. The grant and aid, if we were for the grant writer, it would only be $10,000 if that's what we were going to do. That's the money that we have for grant writing. So we're supporting something that is having a hard time staying afloat once again, like the mayor said. It's unfortunate. Their membership income is very low. So, I don't know. So that's just another, like the mayor said, that's another thing to think about down the road. For this year, I will vote in favor of the 30,000 grant writing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, I'm not saying to get rid of the grant writing or the amount. So it was $8,000 was the grant made from, or sorry, the NDIT grant. So to me, they would get the $8,000 through the grant writing from NDIT, and then equivalent to the business license fees that was collected in 2020, which I think is close to the same number. It's just worded differently for members that are maybe not part of the chamber, but maybe will be. I won't vote in favor of the motion.
Yeah, I think that amount Councillor Kirkowka is the first alternative, I believe, to the recommendation. Any other comments? Councillor Majinski?
I will be in favor of, with the recommendation on the floor, as I think this is a great value to the community and nonprofits, helping them out doing grant writing, because a lot of them aren't capable of doing it, and this is an option for them to do it, and help enhance our community. It's actually for the community, so whatever grants come in, it's going to enhance our nonprofit groups, help them out a lot, because a lot of the numbers of them are down, as well as maybe entice people to join and see some of these grants come in to play and have tax dollars from outside of our community coming in and be used for enhancing how nice this community has been and continues to be.
Councillor Howe?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but no one on this council is saying that we don't support the grant writing. It's just the two different ways of funding. One says just give them $20,000, and the other one says give them the money from the business license fees, which right now is actually more than $20,000, right? So it's the same thing. I agree with what Councillor Kirkowka is saying, is that as you increase the amount of businesses in the community, you're going to make more money, right? That's the fundamental workings of business, of what a Chamber of Commerce is trying to do, is help business create more business. So if they are able to foster more business in the community and create more business licenses, get more people out of the woodwork to go get a business license and get that more, they get more and more and more funding. So there's incentive for them to increase. That's why I like the counter proposal that Councilor Kirkowka has talked about. It's not about not having a grant writer at all. It's about where does the money come from it. So I'm more in support for the one that Councilor Kirkowka is talking of, rather than the one that's on the floor at the present time.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Can I ask Councillor Kirkowka to explain to me again where you thought the hindrance to the chamber was with getting the business license in the first place? That's where I'm getting confused.
Councillor Kirkowka?
Okay, joint, for Councilor Kirby, could you just explain that again, sorry? Sorry, I couldn't.
In your first comment to this motion, you were talking about the chamber, it's getting the hand that feeds you with the business licenses. Now, how would that help the chamber if we're just, I'm confused what you said there, that's all.
Councillor?
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, Councillor Kirby. So what it is other businesses, so I mean, I'm not gonna bring the business names into it. So they're looking from the outside in. The concern is when they go to the chamber, when they were a member, maybe they're not a member no more, but when they would go to the chamber and talk about, and one of them was the garbage bins at Tumbler for the businesses that rent them. I mean, seriously, for the amount that we pay for them. I mean, these guys have bought bins over and over and over again that don't get replaced because they do last. And I mean, that's off the staff in them. The problem they were finding was because it's grant and aid, it seemed like from the chamber side, I'm not blaming the executive director that's in position today, but it seemed like they didn't want to go push up against the district. So again, Councilor Norbert had said, because it's like fighting the hand that feeds you. So to me, if you get rid of the word of grant and aid and give them the $8,000 to the NDIT grant, that's for grant writing, it's already in the report, and the equivalent, and when I talked to Ms. Thompson, like they said, it's easier doing it the previous years than trying to do it this year. Because as been a business license get, the number actually changes. It's a little hard on counting for staff. That's why I said I would support the one equivalent to the 2020 business licenses. Not that way, it's not a grant aid, it's actually gonna be worded that. So to me, the business community or the membership community that has chamber license think that they're actually, I better go buy a license this year. Even though I'm not operational, I'm not gonna run my business this year. I should go buy a business license that actually supports the organization I'm a member of. It could be a good membership drive as well, just from the side of people thinking, geez, I wasn't gonna buy a license, I'm not gonna be open this year. But geez, I'm a member of the chamber, so I can always be a member without running a business. I think I'm gonna join.
1 second, Councillor Norbury. Ms. Thompson, the NDIT grant, doesn't the district have a stipulation that we have to put in $2,000 to add to the $8,000 for the grant writing services? Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So the district is required to have a contribution of 20%. It's an 80-20. So that's why we had put in the extra, like the 2,000. It would depend on how we would word it, right? If it's tied to business licenses, is that part of the contribution? Or is that our portion of the grant? So I did put two options in there of the 8,000 plus the 2 plus the business licenses. But we are required to put in 2,000, or 20% of the grant.
Thank you. Council Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My concern with doing the direct business license to chamber is, we're telling our businesses, you're supporting a nonprofit, an organization's initiative for a nonprofit organization. And saying that if you pay a business license, it's gonna go to the Chamber of Commerce. They may not want to support the Chamber of Commerce, and that's their absolute right. But by having that direct parallel, I think creates that issue. This money is a requirement that we have on businesses to have a business in Tumbler. I don't want to put any stipulations on it. It's going to the chamber, so you're gonna support the chamber twice by paying your business licenses and being a chamber member. I think we just keep it separate. And why pay more than what they're asking, right? Potentially, we're giving them more every year than they need.
Thank you. Councilor Majinski.
Yeah, just to clarify that, for say 2020, where the revenue is 21,820, we would potentially, if we vote down the current motion on the floor, we would give them that matching funds plus another $2,000 to match the NDIT grant. Is that correct? Or you would take their revenue of the 21,820 and subtract $2,000 from that, because that would be the 20% we have to put in for the NDIT grant.
Yeah, we certainly could. I mean, the business license is still a district contribution, right? It's, but the NDIT grant is part of it. So if we were just going to do the grant writing service for $10,000, that would be the 80-20 split. But in the past, we've funded the chamber $30,000, which included the grant writing. That's their request this year. Any other comments? Call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Another motion? Councilor Krukowka.
Put a motion on the floor that we, so I'm gonna do the $8,000 to the chamber through the NDIT grant for grant writing, and equivalent to the business license fees collected for 2020.
In the amount of
29,820.
Correct. Seconder? Councilor Howe? Discussion? Councilor Howe?
Yeah, so this is a one-year thing only at this point. Is there would we have any flavor of setting it for future years? Like, the whole point of this for me is so that they can increase and get more and more and more by the, like, I wouldn't want to see it come back next year and be like, oh, well, we've got $24,000 of business licenses now, and then we go, now we're gonna give you $20,000, Like, this is, should it be for more than 1 year? Should we continue it for multiple? That's my thought on it.
Councilor Norbury, did you have a question? Councilor Krukowka?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, after this motion is actually voted on for the year one, I'm actually I'd like to put a second motion forward that continues. If there's an increase, there's an increase. We should be voting down, because I'm not saying the chamber goes out and does a business license trying to go pay for your business license. We have to have them. But maybe this prevents some of our businesses that go to Dawson Creek to buy their license and can run the whole piece. There's I think it's $100 extra. You pay in Tumbler Ridge, and your business license is good for the whole Peace region. So I can actually go buy my business license in Dawson Creek. Maybe this actually stops some of the businesses that are doing that, and it actually increases, and it gives them more running operation costs. They don't have to keep coming back. They see what they're gonna get.
Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Trent. I believe that's an option for all communities. $75 in each community, or you can pay the $150, and it's the same in all communities. I mean, having that option to only pay $75 in Dawson Creek, maybe the full Peace region, I don't think that's correct. I'd like to have proof of that information.
Okay. Councilor Kirby? Councilor Majinski?
I think it's called an inter-community license, and I think a portion does come to us. It might not be the full amount. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's dispersed between the Dawson Creek and Network Business.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Trent. as I'm not fully aware what it is, I'll have Ms. Torville respond to how that works. Ms. Torville?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to give you a little bit of education about the intercommunity business license. Businesses in Tumbler Ridge, they have to have their parent business license, their home business license within Tumbler Ridge first. And then they can apply for an intercommunity business license for the cost of $130. And that allows them to conduct business within the region. There are 6 participating municipalities within this intercommunity business license bylaw, because it is through bylaw that it's done. So they do, so in essence, they're getting 2 business licenses.
Okay. Councilor Kukalka?
That, I was actually just gonna do it for staff, that it's actually, it's not on our license, but it's that. There's actually businesses that have come up in the summertime, because they're only coming to Tumbler Ridge, this could actually be their home business license. Instead, they get a license from somewhere else, and then they just pay the extra there, and they don't participate anywhere else. It could be an add-on for the district, to the chamber.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilor Norbury?
My only question is, how does the chamber feel about only receiving the business license fees? Did anybody talk to the chamber about this?
I have not. Councilor Kukalka?
I sure talked to the executive director, and she thought it was actually a good idea. That was one of her comments back to me. So I happened to be at last meeting after the meeting, she texted me about it, so.
Councilor?
The executive director is just operates on behalf of the board, so I mean, it should be a board decision, not an executive director decision. And if we are talking about future considerations, this should be a discussion we should be having with the chamber, which is making it in on their behalf.
Councilor Kukalka?
Yeah, so just on that, I actually reached out to their executive director, and she actually calls all their meetings. It seems like the chamber board is ran quite different than most organizations. The board actually doesn't call for a meeting. It's the executive director that deals with when the meetings are and when to call.
Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Member Trent. The board for any organization is run by a board, not the executive director. Just like with us, all boards operate exactly the same in that if they have a contractor, employee, the board makes decisions, the employee may make recommendations, but at the end of the day, it's up to the board. There's no executive director that makes decisions without the approval of the board. That would be whatever action they initiated is.
Other comments? I would say all boards are supposed to operate the same. That would be my only comment. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Three point five, 2021 operating capital budgets, 2021 tax rate setting. Report dated March 22nd, 2021 from the Director of Finance with information on the 2021 operating and capital budgets and the 2021 tax rate setting. Like to move for discussion. Seconder. Councilor Kukalka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we did get a worksheet in regards to tax rate settings. That's something that we should talk about this evening as well, but anyone like to start? Again, thank you to staff for putting this all together. It's quite a bit of work, I know that. Councilor Kukalka?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we're, no disrespect to Ms. Johnson being new, but are we gonna do the tax setting and then have the officers all change like we have in the past on the screens?
She was not able to get it on the screens, I think, this evening, but she does have it on her laptop in front of her, the worksheet. Is that correct, Ms. Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. So, yeah, I wasn't able to, I found out at a later time that I should have had everything up on the screen, and I wasn't able to get that put up there. In regard to tax rate setting, I just kind of want to know where council is at. And I can respond based on questions council has, but I apologize for not being able to throw it up on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Norbert.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Staff, when they gave us their recommended 2021 tax rate settings, I mean, it's this, we collect the same amount of taxes we did last year. So what that means is we still have the same amount that we can operate with. Residential goes down a slight little bit. Same with business, pretty much stays the same as it would have been in 2019. And we're just asking more money from our major and light industry. And in my opinion, that's where we should be getting the majority of our taxes from. We keep them low for residents to make it a good place to live.
Affordable?
There we go. Affordable, attractive, there we go.
Attractive.
Makes it an attractive place to live because our taxes, our residential taxes are so low, and industry can pay for them. You know, if we look at light industry, how much, like, we're seeing that they had a reduction in value this year, but their profits are still sky high. Very, very high. In the light industry, the majority of that class is CNRL, and they're a publicly funded company. And if we look at how much CNRL made last year, $12 billion last year. I have no qualms about asking them to continue with their payments they made last year.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I did notice that we weren't successful on our grant to Harper Flatbed Creek, so that's going to be a pretty big hit surplus there if we want to continue that project. I guess going through the capital and special projects, double check if everyone is happy with this schedule and wants to do anything or adjust anything on it. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Richard. I just wanted to note one addition that we did not highlight. If you look, there is an amount that has been added for the log signpost installation. That would show up under council. We did add an amount there to complete that installation and did not.
Councillor Howe?
The Flatbed Creek erosion restoration, price tag is $875,000. Correct? So is that included in our funding? Like, when we talk about a $200,000 funding shortfall at this point, does that include flatbed? Or if we put flatbed into that, are we $1 million funding shortfall?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Bertrand. The flatbed would be included in that total shortfall at the end of the budget at 197. I will note though that flatbed is funded mostly through surplus. So it's not pulling anything out of taxation. So council has the ability, we do have, our budget is short 197,000. We do have the ability to pull that out of surplus this year. So yeah, we are a little bit short, but it would pull a little bit more out of surplus.
Instead of extra taxation, right? Correct. Councillor Howe?
Okay, so I'm not clear on that yet. So you have included the $875,000 at this point, and at this point we are $200,000 short.
Correct. But
So if we pull it out and we say we're not doing the flatbed restoration.
Continue.
I'll have Ms. Sanders respond.
Okay. At the moment, we have funded flat and erosion restoration from Peace River Agreement and $775,000 from surplus. So if you remove it from the budget, then $100,000, which was to come out of PRA, will really not make a difference because we have to fund 80% of PRA has capital, 20% to the operating. We've already done that.
So we're at 80-20 at this point right now? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Saunders. Follow-up, Councillor Howell?
Yeah, so I'm not comfortable with the Flatbed Creek erosion restoration. That's a huge price tag. And, you know, like I've lived here and I've seen Flatbed, you know, completely underwater more than once, the entire park underwater. So I'm concerned about spending $1 million or whatever, $875,000 to put some rocks on the bank to hope that it's gonna hold in place. Yes, I understand that the previous one we did hold in place for the pump station, but it sits a little bit higher than the one that's eroded. To me, I think we need to look at other options down there, and tonight, I'm not prepared to make a decision to spend $875,000 based on, you know, we're gonna put some rocks in the creek and hope it does something good. So to me, I think that we should remove that from the budget, and then we don't have a $200,000 shortfall, right? That's my take on it.
Councillor Kirkhalka?
Thank you, Your Worship. See, I have a different opinion there, and I mean, I don't know where the numbers come up, and I'm definitely not blaming staff. I'm assuming they reached out to people, but it's not just a Flatbed Creek within the Peace region. It's other rivers and streams that are having the same issues on. And they're having the same issues in Alberta too, and they've already started in some of those places to put up the barriers with rock, try to divert the water from the banks, whether it's possibility of washing out bridges, our pump houses, our asset, which is the Flatbed campground. I mean, I've been down there, we've lost quite a bit of chunk on that backside, and I believe Mr. Beal had spoke to that. And I think that's, it can only get worse. And when all of a sudden we get a flood and it's, oh, told you we should have done it. You know, it cuts right in, it actually takes the pump house up from the backside. It could easily happen. I mean, when we talk water and fire, I don't think you can put a price tag on that. I mean, I know 1.6 is a lot of money there, but it's 800,000. I keep it in.
Okay, Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. We're trying to look with the cut our budget. I mean, sometimes we see these big ticket items and we say, oh, this is the one. I think this is a safety thing, right? You know, contrary to Councillor Howell says, we're not just throwing a couple of rocks down there, right? Maybe, you know, a little bit of an oversimplification. But these erosions, like, they speed up, right? It's just like when we see, you know, I'm sure we've all seen a little creek on the side with the sand. And anyway, what I'm trying to say is I believe that if we don't do anything, the destruction of that area will be hasty. So we need to protect that area, keep it safe for everyone. We potentially lose out on some huge attraction to our area for the campground. So I think we should keep it in.
Thank you. Councillor Howell and Kirkhalka?
Yeah, so when I first originally seen this come in, it was about a grant, and we were like, yeah, $875,000, we get a grant, sure, that'd be great, go ahead and do it. But when we're not getting the grant for it, then it comes down to, well, time out here. Do we need to do the level that they had proposed for the grant? That has to happen. That's what I always get concerned about when we look at this stuff for a grant. When we don't get it, then we just go, oh, well, then we need to go ahead with it. Could we not bring that level down? Can we not have another look at this? Like, you know, to me, it's a hasty decision. This is like the first time we've debated it. It's $1 million decision, and we're just like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, right? Is there no other options for us? Can we not divert the creek? Can we not pull rocks towards the side? Can we not try to get the creek flowing in a different direction or something along those lines? I mean, you know, we've been here that pump house has been here for 35 years and hasn't gone nowhere yet. You know, they had to reshore up the bank, but it's below it, it's lower than it. I don't know, to me, I don't like the fact that we get the number for doing a grant and then it doesn't happen and then we just go ahead, well, we'll take care of it ourselves. And at the end of the day, we're still $200,000 short on the budget. So we got three choices here. We either increase revenue, so we increase taxes to get the $200,000, or we decrease spending, some type of a cut along the way, or we take more money out of reserves that we're continuing to do. We're taking more and more and more money out of our reserves that we're supposed to be putting away for a rainy day. And we got some rainy days coming. We got some rainy days coming with what CNRL is doing contrary to what Mr. Norbury's talking about CNRL, that's a big hit for us. If we lose CNRL with the Pine River gas plant going down and losing all the facilities that are within our district, we still get our gas from North Grizzly. That's not in our district. We lose $1.5 million going forward forever, right? Like, that's a huge hit. That's like more than 15%, it's close to 20% of what we take in tax revenue. We've got to then think about this now for the years going forward. How are we going to either replace that money, which we can't, we'd have to increase everybody's taxes significantly, or are we going to finally try to look for somewhere to cut some costs? Are we legitimately going to look at it and say, you know what, we can't continue to spend like we're spending? We continue to draw out of reserves, we're not going to have any money left there when the time comes when we have to replace some of our underground utilities and facilities and the stuff that's really, really expensive to spend on. We're going to have to start borrowing. We're going to go backwards in Tumbler. And so my concern is we need to look at some spots here where we can save some money. We got some bad stuff coming in the future, especially if CNRL goes down. So I don't want to see a tax burden poured on them as they're already down right now in our region. Company-wise, they may be up, like Mr. Norbury said, but in our region, they certainly aren't.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka.
I'm actually gonna,
Councillor Majinski.
thank you, Mayor Burke. Yeah, I was gonna follow up with Councillor Howe's comment on looking at other options. There definitely something has to be done because it is a liability as it is right now. There's a walking path there and people with green grass and everything else, and it's all undercut, so it has to be dealt with for sure. It's just maybe not at the price tag that we're looking at with doing the riprap along the whole area, but maybe something in the interim we can deal with there would be more appropriate and cost effective.
Ms. Thompson, does Mr. Beal feel there's other options besides close to $1 million on this project?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I do understand where council has the questions about Flatback Creek. I will have Director Beal respond a little bit more, but there are a lot of environmental regulations that are required and permits that are required, so we can't just, pull material in there, but I'll have Director Beal respond.
Ms. Thompson, Your Worship Council. In regards to options, we still have a grant request from Emergency Management of BC to reinstall basically what we lost. So basically, recovering the banks, adding material, but that doesn't forego future flood events that will continually take out the real estate, as you can see now. The proposal that's in the budget is to armor and to prevent the erosion of the real estate, because it is a park, and as you see, we've lost quite a bit of it last year, continually lose it every year, depending on high waters. So to me, this is the best option. We still do have a grant request in regards to Emergency Management BC on basically putting back what we lost, which doesn't resolve the issue.
Okay. And when when's the time we're gonna hear about that one? Affirmative or negative?
The Emergency Management BC, I expect shortly.
Okay.
They have a
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury, then Lehman. Then Councillor Norbury, Lehman, Kirby, Kirkowka.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So, I mean, even if it's a grant, we shouldn't be holding up our decision on this topic because we didn't do our research when it was proposed as a grant. I still read it and I still understood the importance of it. So, even though this is not a grant, I'm still in favor of it. Most of my comments have to do with taxes, so maybe I'll talk a little later.
Okay. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. That's one of the things I was wondering about, because if there are other options, but the drawback is always getting permits to do any work in a creek. But, I mean, you see a lot of these bridges that are being worked on all over the Peace region because of the flood mitigation. So I can't understand why the provincial government, I mean, it's obviously an issue, and we should be able to get help. I just don't see why it's, I know it's sort of our problem, but it's also their problem. And, I mean, if they won't let us do the work, then what are we supposed to do? You know, they kind of tie your hands because we're not gonna give you a permit to, you know, get rid of the trees that are in the creek bed that are holding back the trees that are coming down and causing log jams and ice dam. So, I don't know, I think we need, maybe have a discussion with the government and see what options they're going to allow us to do. And then see what that's going to cost.
Councillor Kirby?
With the money, the $100,000 from the future agreement going into that, so at this point, we were unsuccessful obtaining that grant. You know, there's an option to reapply, and there's a difference of armoring the bank and recovering what we've lost. Is there a way that we could put money into it to get us through to net, like, till we find out on the next grant, and kind of maybe stagger the payments for this for a couple of years? Because I see that work has to be done down there, and is there another option council can take with this budget so we can see some work this season?
Ms. Thompson, is there a possibility for a phased approach on this project?
Thank you. I'll have Director Beal respond to that.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson, Your Worship, Council. Keep in mind that we are trying to mitigate flood events. Those flood events happen almost every year. Seem to be a little bit more shorter succession now, climate change. To do in a phased approach, like say, the first mitigation effort would be to replace the bank to its current or to its previous state, which wouldn't armor the bank. So any future flood events, take it all away again. The grant that we're waiting for word on is only about $250,000 to do that work. That grant will only allow the work to be done to replace to a previous level. It's not to armor, it's not to enhance, it's only to replace what we lost. So risk there is that we could lose it again, and we'd be back in the same boat. The proposal would be to armor that whole real estate. That is a district responsibility. It's not a provincial responsibility. Creeks and rivers and oceans are federal responsibility. We are in the process of applying for permits to do that work because they are about a 6-month lead time. We didn't want to waste the time not getting any work done, so those permit processes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirkowka, then Kirby.
Yeah, I guess my only question would be, do we know why we were unsuccessful at obtaining the grant? There's something that we didn't do that we should have done to obtain that grant.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I don't have the exact wording from the provincial government, but I believe it was, while you qualified, there were too many applications, so you were unsuccessful. Not enough grant money to go around to everyone.
Follow up?
So the reason I ask that is it's the child center, now it's this, and I mean, I don't want to be reliant on grants, I mean, that ends up being tax dollars from another side, but are we getting them in late? Are we waiting? Is it council holding up, waiting for meetings or whatever to get approval on these grants, and the grants are going in a little late compared to the rest of the communities, they're more on top of it? That would be my concern. Is that why we're missing some things? I understand the daycare grant was a little bit different, but it just seems like we're missing out on some of these big grants that staff spend a lot of hours on. I'm just curious if it's from this side when we don't have them at the meetings, or we just missed the meeting when the grant came and the next meeting is weeks. I'm just concerned. They always need our approval to apply for these grants, but that's what's holding us up. I think we need to really look at other towns are beating us and they got the approval in the grants because they were ahead of us. I mean, I would think we should be using our geo park as a leverage to have got that grant in regards to there's walking trails right there. They're actually all over our maps, they're all over our tourism guide, they're all over all of them. To me, that's a leverage tool when you talk to the tourism side of the provincial government. They love our magazine, they love our videos. Like, kind of weird.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So the district does apply for a lot of grants, and we are unsuccessful at times. It seems that our priority projects are the ones that we are not successful on. We do have grants that we have received. We got the condensers and chiller for the arena, which was $1 million. In regard to the trails, that one was a very tight deadline that we knew about, but there's another intake for May 15th. So, we'll apply for May 15th, which gives us a better chance of having a more successful application. So we do apply for grants, we do get turned down, and I don't feel that it's anything staff are doing that we're late or we're not ready for grants. We do have a good application system and information that we provide to achieve grants.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns was we want to make sure that council is opening up the process as well. Correct?
Probably.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I lost my follow-up question to my first question. I think, the grant funding too could just be on our location. Look at the flooding everywhere else all over the province, and we're our little flatbed creek off into the corner. It might be something wouldn't matter. We're gonna have to deal with ourselves down the road if that's the road to choose. But for now, is there a number that we can get through for the next year to fix what we've got? If recovery for now without armoring is the first stage, and what would that number be?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So the grant we've applied for is $250 to put everything back where it is. So we should hear that in the next couple of weeks. But like Director Beal said, we put the dirt back, but we don't have any armoring. We can use that again. So we're looking at them to go at the same time, so that when we do put the dirt back in and we armor it, we won't lose it going forward. So $250 is the number to put the material back.
Follow up?
Thank you. So if we don't get that grant for $250, then do we need to put $250 in? And that's just my question. I'm just confused, I just want to put a dollar amount down here so that we can move forward, because that's what I'd like to see, something happen down there. Because I do think that, if we get more erosion, it's going to just get worse, and we're going to lose the trailhead going out to the back. It's going to take some of that camping away. Our flatbed campground is booked solid every season. So, that's, I want to see something done. If it's not to the extent of the $875, let's figure a number out that we can work with.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. So the $875 includes what we would get for grants. So, sorry, I didn't explain that quite correctly. So the $875 does include the amount that we may get from grant. So we've applied for $250 of the $875 that would be used as the grant. Sorry, I didn't explain that correctly.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Howe?
Yeah, so there's always options down there. There's options to do nothing. We can leave it and slope the bank off and make it so that people can't walk down that trail that's there anymore, or move the trail in further, get rid of the picnic tables that are along the bank. The area has changed, so we can change with it. And I also have the questions, do we have insurance for the area? So the Quonset hut that we have down there that we could lose, that, what's that, $25,000? And the washroom facilities that are down there and the play park, do we have insurance that covers any of that for flooding? So that if we did lose it, do we get covered by insurance? That would be my second question. Then you talk about, the flatbed is always to capacity. Well, at this time right now, a First Nation community has applied to get a piece of the land that's right in behind Flatbed Creek. So maybe this is an opportunity to say, if we need to expand Flatbed Creek, we don't do it down there where we're going to lose the park or lose more as it continues to erode. We ask the First Nation group to say, hey, you guys want to come in and expand Flatbed Park? You can have your portion up here as well. So there's other options. When you talk about spending $1 million, we can create a whole new flatbed park for $1 million, right? We can create one at the Murray River Boat Launch and have a spot for trailers to park over there for $1 million. But to spend $1 million to shore up a bank seems irrational to me. I don't know. I don't get it. There's got to be other options out there. It's always going to flood. I've been here since I was a kid, and that place flooded completely right over top. Yeah, we lose a bit of the banks, but they go down, they slope it, they change it, they move the route of the road, and you get by and you make work with it. the other side of the bank doesn't erode, maybe we have another side of the bank we could move over there, but to me, it's just throwing good money after bad. We're just gonna keep throwing money at this thing, whether it erodes or not. If we don't get the grant to do it, don't do anything with it. Don't spend $1 million on that. Build a new park.
Thank you. Any other comments? Certainly discussed that part pretty good. Entertain a motion in regards to the erosion. I'll put a motion forward that we decrease the amount of the flatbed erosion restoration project from $875,500 to $500,000. Seconder. Councilor Majinski, discussion. Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Can we lower it that amount? How would that impact our ability to actually complete the project? Seems like that's another number that's decided to, only if the grant's successful, we can complete the restoration and protection down there. My concern is, if we are successful, we are out of a situation where we are prone to have this happen.
I think one of the major assets that we're trying to protect down there is the water pump station. The backside of it is unprotected. So I figured 500,000. If we're not successful on the 250 grant, at least we can make it safe down there. That's my opinion. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, I'll just, is that true, that the pump house, are we in jeopardy of losing the pump house the way that Flatbed is right now? I thought we armor guarded against that.
On the one side, yes, but it's eroding on the back side. Is that correct, Ms. Thompson?
I'll have thank you, Mayor Bertrand, I'll have Mr. Beal respond. Mr. Beal?
Ms. Thompson, Your Worship, Council. So the way the erosions happen, it starts to come around the end of the current armory. So if it continues to come around the current armory, it will impact our well, which is 150 feet deep. So once it impacts our well, we just could potentially lose that main supply. We don't use the other pump as much because it has a lot higher iron content. So EW7 is our main pump house right now. And I'm not saying to council or your worship that it's going to happen next year, or if we continue to allow these flood events to erode the real estate down there, it'll eventually start coming around the backside.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Yeah, I won't support the recommendation on the floor, and the only reason I say that is if staff is saying this is what they need to do the job properly, so 875, and possibly 200 is gonna be a grant, so obviously it comes down, so there'll be some savings there. I prefer to put a motion on the floor to take it off of the budget for this year and relook at it next year, or still have applied for grants. Not only, well, let's get a grant, but why not? I mean, if other communities are getting grants, I mean, if we can save the taxpayers dollars, by us just cutting it, then to me, we're better off to hold it off for 1 year. I would be, I guess the other question there would be, the 250 that we've applied for, if we were able to get it, can that be held off to next year until we are? If we don't get a grant for the next year, maybe we can add it. It's just my thing, if you're gonna reduce it, then just take it off. Because to me, staff saying, I need this to do the armory, plus put the road back in when it's washed out. If I get $500,000, well, obviously, I'll try to armor the best I can, but I might not get it all done, and I'm definitely not gonna fill back in what we lost. So to me, you'd be better off to pull it right off, and wait and hope for the grant either has another intake, or that it becomes available again next year. I mean, I listened to Mr. Beal. I don't think we're gonna lose our pump house this year, because can never guarantee nothing, but obviously it seems like we may have a bit of time. We might lose a bit more ground down there, but maybe that's the best option.
Ms. Thompson, can you fill us in on the current grant application? Is there a time deadline on that?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm unaware of what the final date for completion of the grant would be. I will just check with Director Beal.
Please.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Council, Your Worship, I don't have that date in front of me. I do have it in my files. I can certainly consult my files tomorrow and pass that information on to Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman, then Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, instead of arming it with blocks, what's the potential of using the concrete blocks or sheet piles on that along the bank?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Sorry, what word?
Sheet pile. It's corrugated metal,
Oh, okay.
sort of, and you drive it down, and they use it for cofferdams and all kinds of stuff.
Thank you. I'll have Director Beal respond.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Your Worship, Council, I'm fairly aware that there are other options. This is the option that was recommended to the district. It was in line with the current armoring and the success of the current armoring that was placed in 2011. That armoring hasn't been affected at all by the, I'm not sure how many floods we've had since 2011. There's been a few, like Councillor Howell mentioned, that years I've seen that whole area flood over the years. In regards to concrete blocks, I'd have to check. There are serious stipulations on what we can and can't do on that creek bank. That's why we requested the early approval of permits. Some council desires, we still can.
Thank you. Councillor Howell, then Norbury.
Yeah, I kind of like what Councillor Kauka was talking about there. I mean, rather than doing a portion of it, just push it off for this year. We're not going to make the spring flood this year anyways, right? Like, we're not going to have this done by the, spring flood's hitting whether we get this done or not this year. But we buy some time to look at getting another grant. So I kind of like the idea of just taking it right off the table at this point and see if we can apply for another grant. If we get the one that we can just reshore the bank for $250,000, then we do that. And again, that's not taxpayer, that's not coming out of our taxpayers' pockets, it's coming out of the provincial government, so.
Which is taxpayer money.
But it's
Councillor-
not coming out of our budget that we're responsible for in this Tumbler Ridge.
Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So, the motion on the floor may not be ideal what I'm hoping for, but if it's between this and nothing, I would like to know if the $500,000, if we did not receive the funding, would that be enough to protect flatbed, at least the pump house? Could we do something with the $500,000?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I will again have Director Beal respond as he's familiar with the project.
Thank you.
Director
Thank you,
Beal.
Ms. Thompson, Your Worship, Council. So the proposal that's in front of you regards the whole bank, all the way down past the gazebo, or the gazebo, I guess you could call it. If you were to reduce the amount, that would just reduce the amount of coverage that we would have. So I would think that $500,000 would still give adequate coverage to a good portion of the park, but not all the way down. Keep in mind, like I mentioned, that the pump house isn't at risk today, or possibly not tomorrow. This is for future consideration as well.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury, floor.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. I understand that it may not be immediate, but we're rolling the dice, potentially, if we decide to put this off. I'm hearing Councilor Howell say it's real that it floods down there, so it seems to me that this may happen again. Recently, with the, there is an absolute trend of these weather events happening with more and more regularity. So, what is the chance of happening next year? I'd rather not take a chance and risk losing more infrastructure down there, potentially limiting our use. At this point in time, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howell.
How much to put a new pump house in?
Ms. Thompson?
Rough estimate. $1 million.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'll have Director Beal respond to, I'm not aware of what the cost was.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson, Your Worship, Council. So, in regards to erosion, it's not necessarily just eroding the pump house. It's actually contaminating our aquifer, interfering with our pump. To drill a new pump, we're probably looking at an install pump house and infrastructure, probably close to $1 million as well. If we had to relocate from the banks of the Lepid Creek. So the erosion doesn't necessarily affect the topside infrastructure, it affects the aquifer.
Okay, follow up?
Is that not the pump house that has all the iron content in it?
PW8, which is on the other side of the creek,
That's the one with the iron, PW8?
with the higher iron content.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Majinski?
Member Trent. If we take this off the table and we don't do anything, something has to be done this year on the erosion because it is a liability, is it not? We'd have to slope back the bank just because of, we do have a lot of tourists coming there and they're probably gonna go to that river and that would be undercut, so.
From what I understand, staff did make it safe last year. Ms. Thompson, can you clarify, please?
Thank you, Member Trent. I will again have Director Beal respond. Director Beal?
Ms. Thompson, Your Worship Council, we are not authorized to work on the banks without a permit. Like I said, that permitting process, it's a long process, it's a drawn-out process, requires a lot of technical information. So in regards to safety mitigation, we have put up signs to stay away from the bank because they are cut fairly steep. We have moved, we actually had to replace the road, which then we took out three campsites that we had to take out. So the park right now is missing 3 campsites. We haven't installed those anywhere else. So we've had to move everything back. But the best we can do in regards to safety mitigation is just put up signs warning people to stay away from the banks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kokalka?
Thank you, Worship. So yeah, again, I won't support it. My thing is if we're gonna do it all, or take it off the table for 1 year. I guess my question back to staff would be, do we know if there's another intake for that same grant that we were turned down on?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Trent. Year over year, we're unsure of when grants will be continued or not. So there is no guarantee that grant will be, there will be an intake for a continued grant going forward.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Majinski?
The motion on the floor is $575,500 to do the project once we get all the permitting in place.
I think the motion was for 500, correct?
Okay. So we can also do the 375.5
Next year.
next year.
Any other questions? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Take a 10-minute recess, please.
Yeah. How many games ahead? Wait, just wait, just wait.
Okay, 20 jumping jacks.
Wait, just wait. How many games ahead of here? Let's wait till you get to the 7th, 8th game, and we can all catch up to you. Well, there's already playing tonight to cancel the game.
I got one.
Some person was one for
Okay, boy.
It would reduce the cost. You're on the same line. It's not fun.
Yeah, we move the funding around. Yeah.
So quiet in here, Bernie, we can hear you through the speakers. Yes, I can. I'm not saying you stop talking. Comment?
call back to order. So we're still on budget here. Any other issues council would like to bring up? With capital and special projects draft? Councillor Howe?
With the passing of the Flatbed Creek erosion restoration, does that now provide us with a funding surplus of about $175,000?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. So it doesn't necessarily provide us with 175,000 in surplus because that money was going to be taken out of surplus. In speaking with Ms. Sanders, we should be able to shift some of the funding around through PRA and take out the portion that would have been covered by taxation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe?
So where are we then? Do we have a funding shortfall or no?
About 50,000-ish.
Funding shortfall.
Correct.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm still not in favor of the mayor's CAO office down for I can't get on voting back myself.
Did you want to put the motion forward?
Yeah, I'd like to put the motion forward to take out the mayor's CAO office down for from the budget.
Seconder? Some discussion? Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think it's absolutely vital that the mayor's room, the CAO's room, is confidential. As it stands now, we're told, and we can see it, there's a window that provides a gap in the mayor's office to the front lobby. And that would prevent our mayor from having any sort of confidential conversations in his office. So I think we should be keeping that in there this time.
Any other comments? Councillor Kirby?
I guess my comment is we've been running this town hall for years and years without that, and if you're worried about, I just think it just, I don't like the feeling it gives as, to the rest of the building that you can't trust your people. I don't know, that's just my own feeling on it. I don't like the tone of it. I just myself, I'm against it.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes. Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I think sound proofing isn't a bad idea, but I think in order to do a good job, it's going to be more than $65. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, in my opinion, I'm certainly not using my office as much COVID as I was a couple of years ago, but I have heard some concerns from our CAO in regards to some conversations on the phone, and in my opinion, it's part of the retrofit for the building as far as renovations go. And it is pretty imperative to have some confidential conversations for sure. That's my opinion. But I'd certainly be open to postponing my office but moving forward with the CAO's office. Any other comments, questions? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Defeated, thank you. Councilor Norbury?
Mayor Bertrand, seeing no other discussion, maybe we should be moving to accept the capital operating budget.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for any other issues here. Councillor Howe?
I'm gonna try again to put a motion on the floor that we remove the front office and lobby upgrades, community center for $250,000.
Seconder? Councillor Krukowka, discussion? Counselor Howell?
So again, looking for places to carve a few dollars off and save a few bucks for the community. Wasn't happy with the upgrades in the washrooms. And just like Councillor Kirby used in her previous argument, it's worked for 40 years. Why change it now? And to me, it's a large expense that we should have another look at and wait a year until we've had somebody, we have somebody in a full-time position in the community center to evaluate what we actually need over there. That to me is a lot of money to do an upgrade over there that really doesn't need to be done. And we're looking for an area, I'm looking for an area anyways, so that we're not drawing from reserves all the time. We've still got a $50,000 funding shortfall, and I'd like to see us have a $200,000 surplus by removing this, so that's my take on it.
Ms. Thompson, can you clarify that shortfall? I'm not sure if that's actually a deficit or a surplus. Can you please clarify that?
Thank you, Member Trent through Council. So in total, our shortfall was 197. We're now at 50,000. By removing this, if we would remove this, we would not have that a surplus because we're already pulling that out of reserves for future expenditure. So we still would be sitting at that $50,000 mark.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Member Trent, when staff brought this forward for a change, I think they were saying that it's not working. They've identified this. The reason, just to refresh everyone's memory, is that the ergonomics over there are not good for our staff. They can't help people that are in wheelchairs or accessibility options. These are still issues that are not going to be fixed. And we regularly, I'm concerned if we put this off, we're just going to put it off again. The time has come, I think, to take care of this. We have more people that are have mobility issues that are in wheelchairs. We need to address that now, not later.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Howell?
Proof is in the pudding. We also had to access accessibility options for the washrooms that weren't dealt with correctly. So we're going to do it again. What's the old saying? Fool me once, shame on. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me, right? Whatever I'm trying to get at there. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to throw money at it. That's stupid. I don't know. Let her go.
Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Member. So because a project something was missed, so now we're going to assume every project after this is going to be faulty and flawed and made a mistake. This goes out to bid, sees different people, and that comment is just a form of manipulation. It's called gaslighting, if you guys don't know what it is. We're throwing doubt and blame to manipulate people's decision-making on a completely separate issue. Yes, a mistake was made in the washrooms, absolutely, but that does not necessarily mean that the mistake will be made in the next one. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to hold up progressing as a community. We shouldn't hold up improving our community because somebody made a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Thompson, can you please clarify what exactly these front office and lobby upgrades are going to accomplish? I've heard some rumors that it's not addressing accessibility issues. Please.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I will actually have Interim Director Howie respond to that.
Thank you.
Howie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I've reviewed the plans. The main objective is to improve the accessibility at the front counter, and to also do some work around some of the structure to improve access and egress, not only for people who are impaired, but for the general public. The plan also calls for running, you know how the building curves there? The walls curve. Try to run that straight. Take another look at that. There are no additional offices. There would be some change in the area where the photocopier is, and right now that's not being used very well as a coffee room because you can't have more than 2 people in there at a time. But that's what the function is there. So my suggestion is that you either leave the money in or take it out, but I hope to be able to come back with a report within a month that shows some reduction in the cost, because I'm going to take another look at how far down the wall you come. It would go right to that last end room, which is my office. And there's a way it could be done without going that far. So that's the general plan.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkowka, then Lehman.
Thank you, Worship. Just get some clarity from Ms. Thompson. At the far left, it just says need report before moving forward. I'm assuming when we discussed this previous, was we set the funds and then eventually, not saying who she was gonna hire, but once they got into place, then it was gonna come forward for final approval. It's my understanding, and I just want to confirm.
Yes, and that report will include any changes.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lehman, then Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, like, once we get these changes, and instead of saying, okay, we've got a $200,000 budget, why don't we put this project out? People can look at the drawing, they come in. If they want to bid on it, they can bid on it, and then see what the bids come in at. And I'm not in favor of having this $250,000 or $200,000 budget that goes out, and then people bid on it, and it's a no-brainer. So I would just like to see somebody come in, or people come in, and just say, okay, this is what you want, this is what I can do it for. And then it comes back to council and says, okay, we're willing to spend that amount, or we're not. But I realize that you may need to have a preliminary budget, but it does no good. It seems to be counterproductive when you're trying to get a decent price for a project that you want to do, and some of these inflated prices just make it easy. So I would like to see somebody come in, people come in and bid on these, not knowing what the budget is.
Yeah, Ms. Thompson, we had talked about that, how other municipalities X out the numbers. Is that a policy thing, or is that something that we can move towards? I definitely understand Councillor Lehman's concern in regards to basically setting the budget for the contractor, but is there something that we can do to move forward in that regard?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. In the public document that was shared, there are no numbers, there's just a list of projects. Council is the one that is seeing the dollar values on your sheets. So we have removed that going forward, that the public do see the list of projects and a total, but council sees the amounts that have been allocated to each project.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howell, then Kirkowka.
Yeah, so I can give you 2 more examples of accessibility issues that we've made mistakes on, and to me, what point are we gonna stop making mistakes? Right, hold somebody accountable to it is what I'm looking for here. We've got doors going into the community center for wheelchair access. They don't even line up with each other. They bought the wrong doors. One door goes this way, one door goes that way. You gotta come in a wheelchair and turn to get through the doors. We put in an access down to in the lower hockey arena, access to the community center. There's only one set of doors that opens up for somebody in a wheelchair. They get in through the first set of doors, they can't get the second set of doors open. They can't even get in there. There's 2 more issues of where we're trying to improve accessibility and we don't think it through and we don't do it properly. So at what point are we gonna go, yeah, we know, let's just keep spending money and not hold anybody accountable to it? To me, the accountability needs to come now, where we say, no more, we're not gonna do it until we get a better plan and show me that you can do this properly. And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen that yet, so.
Councillor Kirkowka.
Thank you, Worship. So my understanding, and I asked Ms. Thompson this a few minutes ago, but there's an amount put in our budget, but it's not approved until that report comes back. So to me, we see where the changes are, and what's being planned for accessibility and all that. So truly, we're putting a number there, and I guess I didn't know we had X's out to the public. So us, by advertising the amounts in here, we're actually giving it out. So I'll say the number that's in my agenda, but it's not approved until that report comes back anyway. So, yes, we're setting, again, a budget into here. It may get done in 2021 and it may not, because when the plans come back, maybe there's more changes. And maybe it gets done and because the changes are all liked by staff and we haven't missed some of the accessibility issues and we're fixing some of the stuff that we haven't got done yet. So I think they'll give that a fair shake from staff side too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. We can't give up on accessibility. We have to make our buildings accessible for all people. If we have issues, fix them. You know, hearing from residents in wheelchairs that can't get into those doors doesn't mean we just say, well, sorry, I can't come in. We have to do better. I agree, accessibility, we need to hold people accountable. Can't give up on accessibility. For this particular issue, placeholders there. I look forward to see our new interim director of community services come back to report. And while he's doing that, we should still have a placeholder in the budget at this time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor of removing the front office and lobby upgrades project? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Any other issues on the capital and special projects draft? Councillor Kirkowka.
So I don't have any issues. I guess I just want to throw an idea out there and get some feedback, and that's the upgrade to fuel dispenser. I'm assuming that's our public workshop. That's our fuel tank. Have we ever looked into, like, I understand we have bulk fuel, I can't remember when they had the contract, I believe we all seen the number there. Have we ever thought that instead of doing this coming up, and I'm not saying not to do this issue, but maybe we need to look into it, co-op price. Per truck, per unit, per whatever, and support the local guy that came into town and put a bulk station.
Have we ever
Is that a
done,
thought? Is that a thing a municipality can do?
have we ever done a cost comparison, you mean?
Like, I know they're, I don't wanna throw out the number, and Mr. Beal probably has it in his head, but, you know, if we're paying 98 cents and it's $1.05, well, I'm not doing any, there's no repairing of anything there, there's no infrastructure that be at the public works yard anymore, and to me, there's more control when it comes to cars. Right, you know how many miles are, you know how often they're filling the vehicles up. I mean, I'm not sure how their system works now, but I know previously how it worked. Just an idea, I just thought I'd throw out there, it was actually a few local residents mentioned it this morning.
Yeah, sure. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. I will have Director Beal respond to that.
Ms. Thompson, Your Worship Council, just for council's information, we pay rack prices on our fuel, so we actually get it probably the same price that co-op get, if not cheaper. We pay obviously same transportation costs. The upgrade is we've had issues in winter where the system fails, and we've actually had to purchase fuel last year, I believe, from Chevron. Names. So there's a substantial cost to that, because then now you pay all taxes, you pay back price as well. So the upgrades are meant to winterize the system and prevent.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Councillor?
I don't have a follow-up, I just think maybe that's something council can think about. It might be a viable source, I mean, it's 20 grand, I'm not worried about it, but I'm just saying that it was brought by a few people in the community that, why don't we support that? And I'm not saying which one to support, but, you know, there could be a discount of bulk fuel prices there as well.
Possible. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think Councilor Doug is trying to come up with some ideas on how to be more efficient, how to help out our local community and our local economy. One of the issues that I do see is if we go into direct relationship with a business, that's a concern, right? We'd still have to put up for RFP, see where we go from there. But where's the benefit, right? Like I know the co-op has had. Let me stop myself there. If we are responsible for our equipment, we can be responsible for it. We don't have to worry about any sort of service delays with anybody else, any particular issues. We're accountable for it. We can get our guys working on it as quickly as possible so we don't have any potential fueling issues. So, until we have a report in front of us that says this is a more viable option for this, we should keep it in-house for now.
Thank you. Comments? Put forward a motion to, for council to approve the 2021 capital and special projects as amended. Seconder, Councilor Norbury. Discussion? Councilor Kirkowka.
Okay, I just want to confirm in regards to the repair of the pallet was taken out in the previous notation.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, that is correct.
Any other comments? Discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Are you opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay. Operational budget, any issues there, council? Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Roberta. I don't have any issues, but I will say that I do like the format, and I know speaking to Ms. Thompson about the future formats. It is really interesting, it's really great to see the breakdown of some of the services that we are providing. Things like the golf course, the winter road clearing. It's really informative. I look forward to when we have those summarized. But in the meantime,
Councilor Kirkowka?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, I know we talked about it, there was a motion made at the last meeting in regards to maybe a possible increase to snow removal service, and we're started on it.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Pratt. Give me one moment. As far as a completion of a report, we haven't been able to get that fully brought into complete a costing for council on it. There is not a budget increase that we've put in there this year. I'm pretty sure not. We're just checking.
I don't believe so, no.
Once the report is brought back, dependent on the cost and council wishes, I feel that we probably could tell council that it would cost this amount. If you want to go forward, this is where we would be able to shift part of our budget from in other places. When we have tightened the budget a lot, there is maybe a little bit of room that we can find elsewhere.
And I did notice going through the schedules, you know, there was some accounting as far as where salaries go, and there were some big decreases and big increases because we are putting in salaries in proper places now. On some of the budgets, for example, the crack ceiling, I noticed the budget was down for next year. But I took it as cleaning up the accounting of that account rather than decreasing the service, correct?
Correct. Do you know what page that's on?
I think it's 51.
One in the agenda package?
Correct.
plenty of them.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, you will see that the wages are not allocated throughout in the budget, but it would be included higher up within our accounts that we'll see a larger number there. So crack ceiling hasn't decreased. We did decrease the contract amount because we actually do not contract out our crack ceiling. And it was a non-used budget item, so we did pull it out this year.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, what I was getting at was seeing any big increases or big decreases. The decreases aren't the decrease in service. It's more so a cleanup of the accounting.
Yeah, it mostly in wages.
Right. Thank you. Councilor Majinski.
Page 25 of the operating budget, just a curiosity on vandalism. Just for roads and streets, do we have that for each building? So for Bricktown Hall and Green Center, do you have a designated amount for each of those buildings? Say like a window gets broken, or, yeah, I can see why there wouldn't be much for roads and streets, maybe street signs and posts and stuff like that, maybe some of wayfinding, but is there anything else in regards to that for the rest of our buildings?
As far as vandalism goes, Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I don't know the detail on vandalism and where we have it all throughout our budget if we would. If a window would get broke, depending on the cost to replace, it would be something that would be covered under our insurance. So it would be the deductible that we would pay. So I don't believe we have anything specifically taken up for broken windows, or it would be something smaller. We would just cover it under repair and maintenance of our facilities, not as a vandalism. I'm not sure why we have a vandalism item in the budget, but I could definitely look into it.
Follow up?
Yeah, so where under that would, I know there's street signs and roads and stuff like that. What about light posts? Would that be under that? Do we own the light posts, and are they the district's property?
I believe the light posts on Mackenzie and Southgate are BC Hydros. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand, through council. I'll have Director Beal respond. Director Beal?
Thank you.
Ms. Thompson, Worship Council, this GL code has been in there for quite some time, but actually the history of it is mostly for street signs and light posts, downtown light posts, that graffiti, so it didn't cover like buildings or anything else. So the history of it is mostly for street signs. I know in previous years, some timers here, remember that we used to have a lot of graffiti painted on our stop signs. That's certainly been reduced. Hopefully, it's not being by anything I but that's where the history of the GL came. And that's why it's so low, because it's dropped down.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Howe?
So we're still about $50,000 short right now. Can you pull out $50,000 out of that? Are you comfortable where you are? Is there anywhere you can save us $50,000?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm confident at $50,000 short that with other grants that we've applied for that we haven't necessarily recorded in our revenues, that we can make up a $50,000 difference in smaller grants that we will obtain but have not recorded at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Okay, I'll put forward a motion to approve the 2021 operating budget. Seconder, Councillor Norbury. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Did you record Councillor Lehman opposed? Did you see that? Yeah, please. And Councillor Howe? Okay, tax rates. We are collecting extra 484,000 this year, or potentially from the business account. So that will be the difference from last year, without any changes. I'm in favor of keeping the tax rates the same, or 2% across the board for inflation increase. That's my thinking at the moment. Councilor Norbury?
So Mayor Bertrand, you're saying just the 2% of last year, so it would have no effect on the light industrial, major industrial?
No, 2% across each description, except for utilities that we can't control. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm in favor of the same collection of 2020.
Mhm.
And that's, you'll see a slight reduction of our residential, slight reduction of our, same as our business, but we put that tax burden back on major and light industry.
Well, it is already just given the breakdown, but you're talking about a 0% increase from 2020. Is that same amount collected from 2020 in each category?
Yes, so when we look at in our agenda, the which table, I'm talking about, we accept the top table, not the second table.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of that as well. I don't think we need a serious increase. I think, given COVID times, everybody is feeling it in some degree, to some aspect. I don't think significant increases are needed at this time. Yeah. Councilor Kirby?
Here, which I agree to keeping the in line with the year 2020 and the table at the top. I think that we're still seeing some effects from COVID, and I think we're still seeing some fragile states happening within residential and business. So I would move for that. I would vote in favor of the top chart.
Council want to put forward any changes to Ms. Thompson? She has the worksheet available and can make some changes or adjustments if anyone would like. Councilor Norbury?
I'm happy to call Ms. Thompson provided us with these charts. And I know in the past we've had to play with them. But in my experience, it's hard to make those decisions. Right? We're going back and forth. This way, we can say to our residents, their tax values went up, but you're paying the same. So in effect, we are getting a bit of a decrease this year. And I think that's where we should be. In COVID times are tough. So I'm happy with how Ms. Thompson has presented us with this option. I think it's our best option.
Okay. Councilor Howe?
So I am a little concerned about light industry. Generally, that affects the CNRL. We are looking at increasing their mill rate 16%, 16 points, sorry, so that we can collect the same amount of money that we got from them last year based on the discussions on the top paragraph here. But my concern in that is what happens when the CNRL is no longer around. Like we all, maybe we never thought that could ever happen, but the writing sure looks like it's on the walls at this time now. That Pine River shuts down and they shut down the plants that are within our area. that we could potentially lose somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.6 million in tax revenue going forward. Who else do we have left to tax at that point? What do we do at that point? Then do we just lump that onto the mines because they're the major industrial? Or do we then say, sorry, now business rates are going up or residential rates? So like, just to immediately, like CNRL is down in the area right now, and I don't want to lose them as somebody in our area. We haven't had that discussion with them at all. I know the mayor has had some discussions with our CAO and a brief conversation, but I am a little concerned of what message that sends to a major employer like CNRL in the area, that they've cut out a pipeline and reduced their value by $13 million that we can tax them on. And as a result, we just said, we're just going to increase your taxes on everything else. And whoever else is lumped into that light industrial tax rate. If there's anyone else in there, they now have to make up that shortfall as well. So a little concerned about the message that sends, that we're not looking to share that tax burden across all rates.
Councilor Norbury?
Get it now while we can. If we are concerned about that tax class being lowered, do what we can. Because if we don't, we're talking about our future. Right? If we're soft on them, and we've been soft on light industry, it didn't stop them from shutting down the what they shut down. That's external factors. It has nothing to do with tax rates. They will always come back and say to us, please. They'll always come back and say we want to cut some money, because that's what they do. They're always everybody's trying to cut money, and they'll give us a song and dance regardless. When we got a breakdown of who was in that tax class, majority of it was CNRL. Now again, they made $12 billion. They made $12 billion. $611 million. We are asking for 1.5 from that class. If somebody's making $12,000 and we ask them for $1.50, that's not going to impede their business. So, looking in the future, by not asking for this now, we are impeding our ability to fight through this. And who are we going to put this onto? Our residents. If we don't collect it now, we're going to have to make our residents pay for it later. And that's why I'm not a fan of. This is why I'm a fan of keeping the tax burden on our industry. If we don't, it falls back on our residents, our businesses. I want to keep those as low as possible.
Okay, thank you. I don't think the shortfall or potential shortfall in the future needs to fall back onto our residents. I think we just need to drop our budget by $1.5 million. I don't think we need to collect as much if we have to. That's my opinion. I don't think residents need to make up 1.5 when they're only contributing 1.2. It's craziness. Not going to double the rates. Any other comments? Councillor Norbury?
We're trying to put forward that we accept the 2021 tax rate setting and analysis, same correction as 2020. Suggested 2020 business tax rate.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Kirby, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, so I believe just have library left, Ms. Thompson, is that correct? Okay. Have I missed anything?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. There is one item that I should have had on the last scheduled meetings to talk to the council about. So under the community charter, a council must undertake a process of public consultation regarding the proposed financial plan before it is adopted. So after the first two readings, council should hold a public meeting. We will be prepared with a little bit better of a summary that we can post on the website for the public. We are required to have 2 weeks 2 weeks' notice, sorry, to have the public meeting. So after this evening, we should be able to have the bylaw for April 6th for the first 2 readings. So we would suggest to be able to advertise that we can hold the public meeting 14th or 15th of April before we would have the final reading and adoption of the financial.
Can you explain exactly what this meeting will entail, please?
So while council meetings are held in public, it is a regular council meeting held in public. This is a public meeting, so that what other communities have done during COVID is they've put it out on their website and allowed residents to email questions in. The council can answer about certain items on the budget, and it's held as a public meeting, not a meeting held in public.
Okay,
It allows the public to comment, residents and businesses to comment on the budget before the final adoption of the financial plan.
okay, thank you. So we were looking at April 13th, April 14th,
Public consultation, sorry.
public con. So we do have a PMP meeting on the April 12th, which is the Monday. Looking to have that public hearing that week at some point. Does the Tuesday work for everybody? 13th? Okay, forward with that. Ms. Thompson?
Hi.
5 o'clock? 5 o'clock, once, twice. So, Councilor Norbert?
Thank you, Robert. I just have a little bit of question on the format, and I apologize if we covered this in this conference. I'm really trying to grasp it. So, are we hosting it here and people are going to come in? Or are we going to host it in the live? Just a little more clarity on it. Or is it just me digital only?
It will be, sorry,
Ms. Thompson, please.
thank you, Member. So it will be published on our website, and it will be, the public notice will also say that questions can be emailed to here, and then council can answer those questions, because we still aren't allowed to have, unless restrictions lift, we're not allowed to have the public attend our meetings unless as a delegation. So this is public consultation, they can email questions in, and we will be able to answer them, and it will be in a live stream through at the council chambers. But nobody can attend, but the information will be on the website for them to find.
Follow up?
Thank you, Member. And so essentially, we're still going to be here. People can shoot their questions in. We're going to have it cut off for those questions.
Time, Thompson? Is there a
A
timeline?
week before or 3 days before?
No, the actual meeting, correct? Sorry, go ahead.
I just mean like the questions, like, are we going to say like at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, your questions need to be in, or are they going to be like, people can, just because if people ask us, I want to be able to relay that information, like they can shoot a question at 5:10, 5:15. I apologize, I don't want to be micromanaging here, but I want to have the information available for people.
Ms. Thompson?
Correct. So we have a draft notice that we will be putting out. Written comments received will be distributed for distributed to council for their consideration at the meeting. We have, sorry, having a little bit of trouble reading tonight. You know, we do recognize that comments are important from our residents, and anybody can submit them by a certain period of time on a date. So if we wanted, so if the meeting is being held on the 13th, if we want to have submissions by the previous Friday, that would work well for us.
Thank you.
So the notice will go out as soon as possible with those dates on there.
Thank you. Okay, question and answer period. Ms. Thompson, did you receive any questions? She's not messing around now.
Thank you, River Trend. I do not have any questions that came through tonight.
Okay, thank you. German, Councillor Kirkowka.
Monday, March 22nd, 2021 budget. Meeting be adjourned.
Second. Freeman, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Oh, yeah. I just, you wouldn't have seen.